we were doing claims mostly against the police where people were wrongly convicted or suffered, abuse or excessive force through arrest or otherwise. And we started to do both criminal, to continue to do criminal defense, but also to do this civil rights work, which was almost like being a prosecutor in a way of the police. But no one's going to jail. You're trying to get compensation for harm that's been caused to people through being falsely incarcerated or physically injured.
Host Melissa Rosenblum is one of only a few women certified by the Supreme Court of New Jersey as a criminal trial attorney. When you add kids, a booming law business, and a little black book full of subject matter experts, you've got the Mighty Merp podcast, and part 2 in this series. That's mightymerp.com.
And in that office, even today, well, one, I thought we always cheered the other attorneys' successes. There wasn't like a competition of, oh my goodness, they're doing better than me. It was like a truly supportive, if somebody obtained a not guilty or won a motion to suppress, it was everyone so genuinely happy in a way that not like, oh my goodness, they're going to promote faster than me. It didn't have that level of competition. And I think even today, even attorneys that came after me, I was at the public defender's office for about 6.5 years. And so, the people that came after me, if I say I was a Philly public defender, it's like an immediate bond right there.
Right, exactly. I feel like it's like maybe if you've been in the Marine Corps or some similar sort of thing, you have this kind of shared experience that's hard to describe or it's hard to create just through communication. You have to have a shared lived experience.
So you had an interesting career because you were at the public defender's office after 5 years, and then you were there for a number of years. I think you were in every unit, right? You rotated through every unit and then went to the major crimes unit?
Yeah, and then I did that. I did jury trials for about a year, and then I actually did a year in the appeals unit, which was very gratifying as well. So that's not, that you're not going to court much if at all, and you get to work on legal issues and more. You get to learn the sort of academics of the law, and you get to spend time developing arguments more fully. So that was and of course learn how the appellate courts work and how to make arguments on appeal, which is like a different sort of practice and a different skill. So that was it gave me a lot more confidence. I think going forward in terms of just sort of generally in practicing law more completely.
Right. It's funny. I think that if you said to someone entering law school or someone who doesn't practice that handling appellate arguments is extremely different than trial work, they would be surprised. And I'm very comfortable in trial or arguing motions. And I think I'm very effective at that. And I handle appeals, and I've argued appeals, and I've argued in front of the New Jersey Supreme Court. And every time I feel, oh my goodness, this is a skill set that I'm still learning and working on, that it's not as natural. It's just so different. And
it is. And there's some people are better at it than others. I've worked with some very, very experienced and skilled appellate lawyers who actually think of appeals almost like they're trials, and they're making decisions as though they were on trial. And that's fascinating to me. And you get to a level of practice where you're not just, making academic arguments. You're making decisions about how to argue in a way that you often think about how to try a case. And that's interesting.
So how long were you at the public defender's office your first time?
A little over 4 years. I was there for a little over 4 years.
And then where did your career take you?
I spent a year in New York with a private attorney. We moved to New York for my wife's job. Came back to Philly shortly after that and went into private practice with a couple of other former public defenders. Mm-hmm. and worked in private criminal practice with them for about 8 years, and that's when I started to do civil rights work, which of course is not criminal, it's civil. It's bringing it's a lot of things, but what we did was we were doing claims mostly against the police where people were wrongly convicted or suffered abuse or excessive force through arrest or otherwise. And we started to do both criminal, to continue to do criminal defense, but also to do this civil rights work, which was almost like being a prosecutor in a way of the police. But no one's going to jail. You're trying to get compensation for harm that's been caused to people through being falsely incarcerated or physically injured.
So were you representing your criminal clients and then following through on civil rights claims for them?
Yeah.
Or
but some of it was that, and then there were just people who had their cases had been resolved and came to us afterwards. There's a lot of people who do criminal defense that don't cross over to do the civil work. A lot of criminal lawyers just strictly do criminal defense.
And that would be me.
Yeah. So if the criminal case ends and they, they were obviously mistreated, and they want to find someone to bring a claim, you have to find either the rare criminal practitioner who does it, or find an attorney that's doing civil law.
Right. So what makes a case a valid civil rights claim? Because as somebody who practices a criminal law, most of my clients believe they have civil rights claims and violations.
Right.
And although many of them are treated poorly, and there might be events during the process that are outrageous or, uncomfortable, immoral, all of that doesn't always rise to a civil rights claim, correct?
Right. Yeah, that's right. So essentially, when you're talking about a civil rights claim in the context of criminal law, because employment discrimination is civil rights. There's denial of freedom of speech can be a civil rights claim as well, but in other areas. But in the context of a criminal case, there's really sort of two sides to this. One is that you have been prosecuted and incarcerated based upon false information, or it's either false information or you've been denied a fair trial in the sense that evidence has been withheld, or witnesses or evidence has been manufactured, whether that's just somebody falsifying a record or coercing a false statement, or presenting a witness who's falsely testifying for whatever reason, whether they've made a deal with the state to give false evidence, or they've been coerced into it in some other way. So if you've been prosecuted and incarcerated, usually based upon false evidence or a lack of honest and credible evidence, then you have what's known as either a malicious prosecution claim, or in federal law, there's a statute that says that's section 1983, the Civil Code. It's 42 USC 1983, and that gives you that covers a broad array of things, such that includes both malicious prosecution, that is prosecuting somebody without probable cause, or denial of a fair trial, and that, evidence has been hidden or destroyed or falsified, and you've not gotten fair process. So that's one side of the sort of the civil rights world, where you're essentially suing for, your loss of liberty, costs of your defense, other things that you suffered, harm from being involved in the criminal process. The other side is when the police use excessive force. So if you are fleeing the police for some reason, and you're not particularly a danger to anyone, and they shoot you in the back to stop you, that would be excessive force, and you can bring a claim against the police for that. If you are beaten because you have given the police a hard time during your arrest, and you've angered someone, and they've taken it out on you by beating you and breaking your arm or knocking your teeth out or knocking you unconscious, whatever the case may be, and you have not really given a reason for that. That is, you've not caused a threat to the police or anyone else, but some police officer has decided that they're going to teach you a lesson, or they're going to make you pay for whatever aggravation you've caused, or they just don't like you, whether it's your race or what the police know about you or suspect about you. In those cases, you can sue the police officer as though you were, it's essentially a personal injury claim. Plus, because there's other sorts of, you can get punitive damages. There's very few kinds of claims in our system where you can get punitive damages, but the jury can impose a penalty on the defendant as a deterrent for doing this again. Or you're going to have to do some editing there.
I'm definitely going to have to do some editing there.
So I don't know what happened there. Anyway, so I can just pick up from there. So those are the two sort of principal types of civil rights claims you have against police. As I said, there are other types of civil rights claims, but claims that arise from the criminal justice process usually involve wrongful conviction or incarceration and physical harm. Now,
is that how you got involved with the Innocence Project?
I actually the case I worked on with the Innocence Project was a sort of a run-of-the-mill. I don't want to say there's no really run-of-the-mill, but it was just a case that came to our office for someone who was claiming their innocence and was seeking a new trial or seeking redress from what they from what they believed was a wrongful conviction. And it was a case I got involved in, and it had many sort of twists and turns. And the way I got involved with the Innocence Project was I had been working on this case essentially as a solo practitioner, and I was handling it pro bono. It was a case such as Chester Hollman, is a case I came to believe in the client's innocence, and these were humble people. They were not wealthy people.
I have to stop you because there are people that do not know what pro bono means.
Okay, so I basically did it for no fee. They originally hired me to do an appeal, and once I got into the case and saw what was involved, and we developed some other evidence of Chester's actual innocence, I decided I could not. I had to do this case as a matter of conscience and not for fee. So totally a matter of conscience. So other than that, the initial appeal, the rest of the work was done, for free, basically. So,
which is what pro bono means. So I do need to clarify this.
Yes, right.
You were a private attorney trying to make money, and you said
correct. I was in business, and the great thing about being in business for yourself is you get to make these decisions. And this was a decision I felt that called for, I think it called for this kind of effort. So I got involved in the case and was doing mostly my own investigation and my own work. And then in the middle of the case, I represented Chester for close to 15 years. So I'd been working on the case for about 6 or 7 months and 6 or 7 years, I should say. Sorry. And the Innocence Project hadn't even, at least the Pennsylvania Innocence Project, didn't exist when this case started. It was founded, I think, in 2010. And I knew the director. We had worked together
as a public defender.
As a public defender, and I called her up to congratulate her, and she said thanks, but she's like, we have no cases right now. You have anything we might be interested in? I said, do I ever? So we signed up with the Innocence Project, and they provided they provided investigators and lawyers to help us, and it became a collaboration essentially.
Okay, so we're talking about Chester, this case, which was an amazing case. My paralegal said that she watched the Neflix episode with you in it because she knew I was interviewing, and she said she bawled the whole time crying. So
I can't watch it and not cry myself.
So tell us about Chester. Tell us,
So Chester was a young man, this is in 1991. He's a young man, grew up in suburban Wilmington, did not, grew up in a very kind of conventional suburban life. His parents both worked. They were churchgoers. He went to high school. He was in the band. He played football. He did a lot of different things. And when he graduated, he was going to community college. He gets a job working for an armored car company, if you can believe it, and was going to community college. And I had an ambition to go into law enforcement. I think he thought he might become an FBI agent, I think, even.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned. There is more to come. Mighty Merp is available on iTunes, Spotify, and all your favorite apps and players. But the best way to experience the show is to visit mightymerp.com. That's mightymerp.com.